I guess I'm okay to start. Good afternoon, everyone. And what a unbelievable turnout that we have for this call. We thank you for all joining today. I want to thank everyone who has reached out to me and others of the county who have expressed your concerns. We're going to take a few minutes and try to get us up to speed on where we're at with this issues that's affecting all of us. Um, the fear and outrage that has gripped us, the anger that has gripped us all, has affected every sector of our community. And we believe that now is the time for us to listen and to hear from you and to be able to talk about how are we going to deal with the aftermath of something that we know should have never happened. And we are all hurting. I want you to know that from the time that I first saw the video, my life has been changed, and I want you to know that we are not alone in this. That there are others in our community that truly care about what's happened, and we're going to work together to do some things that will fix it. I sent you all a letter, and I want to just say that first of all, our board of commissioners, our chair, we've talked about this and the importance of our convening a time with you today to make sure that we elevate the discussion around systemic racism, the fact that we still have not arrived at a place where every human being in our country is treated as an equal, valued member of society to the extent that they can have a full life. Um, George Floyd grew up about 45 miles east of Smithfield, North Carolina, where I grew up in North Carolina as a kid, in Fayetteville, only about 45 miles. And he was a person who they called a gentle giant. He like me, belonged to a group of fraternity that loved basketball and grew up in an inner city community. And without the support and help of others, we never would have made it out. I remember one day I was in Flint, Michigan. It was about dusk, 7 o'clock p.m. And one day the police rolled up on me and they asked me to put my hands on the car to frisk me because someone had robbed something in the community. And the fear that gripped me, the same fear that gripped me that when I saw what happened to George Floyd uh, in Minneapolis, that fear that I'm sure he was experiencing at that time. But I'm here to tell you that not every officer behaves that way. That our sheriff's department, uh, the people that wear our uniform, um, from my 16 years of working with the county, at the county, doing the role that I play and interacting with our sheriff's department, I can tell you that these outstanding officers are here to protect our community. And the moral standard and respect that they have for our community uh, should be an example for how all officers and how all departments should work to interact with our community. Police reform is needed. I can tell you that the city of Grand Rapids is working on that. We have been meeting with the city of Grand Rapids. We are interested in what we can do to work alongside them. I know Sheriff Michelle Young is on the phone today, and I know that her staff stands by her and what she's attempting to do to make sure that the culture that we all believe in, the culture which believes in treating others with respect and dignity and valuing another person's life, is really the hallmark of how Kent County and all of you feel about um, how we should interact with our community. And I just am a firm believer that if we do that together, we can change the world. That what we do today is important not only for us, but it's important for the rest of the community. And how, the example that we set is critical. How we manage and how we support one another is critical. Several of you have reached out and you've provided feedback from the letter that I sent to all of you. And you are very encouraging. Uh, there's no doubt that you are all hurt by this as I am. I never thought that at this time in history we would receive this sort of situation where the community was in an uproar, that there were riots happening on our streets, and that people were protesting to the point that they were damaging our buildings, our courthouse, our Aditonia location. And it's with heavy heart that I come today uh, with you, seeking a way out of this, trying to figure out what can we do as an organization, as a community, to live out our values and to begin to figure out how do we set the example for how we live together, how we work together, how we change the way that our society behaves. And it will take all of us. Um, you've asked, what can you do? How can you help? This webinar is the starting point for that. We don't have the answers. We don't have the solutions, but we figured that you have insights, you have ideas that can help us. And we're going to ask every department, every employee to provide input. We're going to give an opportunity for you to provide chat and input on this call today. And we're going to stay united. This is not, and I said this the other day, this is not a sprint. This is not a marathon. This is more like a 440 hurdle, whereby we will need to work together to figure out how do we pass the baton to the sheriff's department, to the circuit court, to our veteran services department, our district court, our public works, our drain commissioner, our prosecutor, our clerk's office, our health department. How do we join together in this and take advantage of the opportunity where we can build a better place for our community? We're doing a lot of good things, no doubt about it, but we need to do more. We need to get real about the reality that some of us are not there yet. Some of us do not believe in treating one another. And it sometimes isn't because um, it's intentional. It's because of what maybe someone is going through and how life is coming at them, that we react and we behave in anger in a way that doesn't help, but it hurts. We have to understand that. And it's hope and pray that none of this ever comes back to say that we didn't do anything. We sat idle. We didn't say anything. We didn't challenge ourselves. But we're willing to take a look at ourselves and say, what can I do to make sure that this never happens again? Where no one feels that they have to treat another human being like that again. In my letter, I mentioned that it's time to honor George Floyd. Let me talk about that for a minute before we move on. Every human life on this green earth is to be honored. Every person on this earth has the potential of providing someone something that could help them be a better human being. And no one's life should be snuffed out, no matter what the issue is. No one should be given a life sentence. If there's an opportunity to correct something, let's correct it. But please, let's not treat one another as if their life isn't valued. So I want to stop there, and I want to say, please be mindful of your interactions that you have with one another. Please be responsible and sensitive to what some are going through. Do not take for granted that this is a situation that's isolated. This happens every day in America, where someone feels threatened, not treated respectfully, uh, not looked at as an equal, and we've got to change that. So it's important. And I just want to say, as we continue this conversation, please, please do what you can to listen and help each other. And we're going to talk about some of the things that we can do uh, together to help. And then I will stop there. And I wanted to introduce the panel that's going to be on today. We have Sheriff Michelle Young. She's on the phone today on the video. Teresa Branson from the Health Department. Amy Rolston from Human Resources. And I believe Andy Thalhammer is there as well from the Circuit Court. Adam London, I don't know if you've gotten on, but I may call upon you as well. And we'll let this be an opportunity for us to have this conversation and to hear from you. I hope this has sparked some conversation. We respectfully ask you to comment in a concise manner so that we can deliberate and share what is being said. We'll try to respond to as many questions as possible as time permits. And after this is over, we hope that we will have an opportunity to even engage further. But if you have inquiries, send them to cic@kentcountymi.gov, cic@kentcountymi.gov. So I'll begin the conversation, and I hope that this will be of help. And I'll start with the Sheriff's Department. And I'd like to get Michelle Young's take on recent events, and I'd like to hear from her. What's happening at our Sheriff's Department, and what's the mood over there, and tell us about how we're going to work together, Sheriff.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am glad to be here today. I think this is an important conversation to continue. There's different elements of it that has come into our focus over the last several weeks. And, first, let me start by saying I share the heartbreak of most of our nation to witness the murder of Mr. Floyd, and every law enforcement officer I know watched with horror of that video, and just the repression and criminal acts that we witnessed. So starting with that moment, if I can back up before the riots and the protests, there started to be a huge conversation in law enforcement. How do we make sure that industry changes, that all of us who share best practices and have worked and strove to be the best departments we can be, those things that we do in such a routine way, how do we make sure that those are repeated in agency after agency, law enforcement officer after law enforcement officer, so that these things don't happen? And so, obviously we look at all of our policies and procedures, and I can just say, and I don't need to go into each of them individually, but most of the things that people are calling for in social media and on network TV and in conversations, they've been incorporated in our policy manual for the last decade and a half. And it's, frankly, I've never known chokeholds to be an acceptable practice, and I've been here for 31 years. So we aren't doing those things that we have to specifically change. But as we talked through the conversations, one of the things that strikes me, and I think I would like this to actually even be considered as we're talking today, the circle is too small. When you draw a circle around police brutality and say police brutality is wrong, I think that's such an obvious statement that nobody could possibly argue with that. But I think the circle actually needs to be broader than that. We have to cultivate a culture of compassion and empathy, civility, respect. And when we make that the focus, behaviors that step outside of those boundaries are so much easier to spot before they get to the point of brutality or violence. And I think that's what we've done here at the sheriff's office. I think broader than that, that's what we've done here at the county. And I think that is where we need to head or make sure we are as a law enforcement profession. And I feel like that will make us more approachable, that will make directions easier to hear, that will make the collaboration of the community that much fuller. And when we've crossed that bridge as an entire profession, I think we're going to get to where we need to go as a profession, and hopefully we'll find the respect we desperately need and desire from our communities. So let me start by saying that. And I want to talk for a second on protests, because this is something that has also been bantered around as the sheriff's department, different people talk about what their views are. For a living, we stand beside people who are exercising their First Amendment rights of free speech. And I believe that is why our country is where we are today, that people have the liberty to speak out, that people exercise the liberty to speak out, and that we do so in a productive way, in a way that elevates the lower voices and make sure everybody's heard. So I don't think there's a law enforcement entity that I know of that doesn't support the fact that there are protests advocating for things that they want to see nationwide in law enforcement or in public service or in economic service or public health. I think that's all really, really powerful. But I think it's important that we realize that there are things such as social terrorism, terrorists who will prey on communities who are in a moment of discourse and take opportunities to do damage in those communities or to leverage disenfranchised individuals into doing violence or doing their work. And we definitely witnessed that here in Kent County. It doesn't mean we didn't have local members of our community involved in the riot portion of the last couple of weeks. We certainly did, but those are concerted efforts, and we're not the first community to fall victim to this. We won't be the last community. I think we have to be united in our perspective that protests need to be done in a respectful and peaceful way, and we'll stand beside any group who's doing that. Did I answer your questions?
Yes, you did a really good job, Sheriff. Thank you so much. And Michelle, it's really been great working with you through this. I can't thank you enough. Your compassion really shows through, and I'm just so honored to work with you and your team. So, yeah, appreciate what you've shared, and I'm sure there are going to be questions. We have now an opportunity to hear. Thank you, Sheriff. We have an opportunity to hear from all of you. Adam London is on the line. Amy Rolston from our Human Resources Department. Darius Quinn from HR is there. Andy Thalhammer's there. And we're going to take a few questions that have come up. And please make sure that you're going through the Q&A chat opportunity to provide these questions and your comments. We'll take them now. We don't want to be the talking heads all day. We want to hear from you, and we want to have you join in on the conversation so that we can respond and communicate. So let's take a few questions.
All right, first question is, the COVID-19 enforcement of orders seems to have been discontinued during the protests. Are we seeing any increases in numbers of people testing positive since the riot in Grand Rapids?
Adam, maybe you could take that, or Teresa.
So I'll go ahead and take that one. And thank you, Eamon, for convening this town hall today. I think it's a really important conversation. And COVID-19 is certainly intertwined with all of the events of the past few weeks as well. So far, we have not seen an increase in COVID-19 cases. We continue to see a downward trend, and I hope that continues. It would, if we're going to see an increase, probably take a couple of weeks for that to manifest itself because of the delays in transmission, incubation period, and testing. But so far, we have not seen an increase in cases.
Very good. Thanks, Adam. Next question.
Will Kent County be making a statement taking a stand against racism via a television commercial or social media?
We've been thinking through that. Lori Latham and others within the communications team and administrator's office. We've actually talked with Adam London a bit about it as well. I talked with him yesterday about how do we collectively get out, and we have some excellent tool sets over at the health department to help us do that, to make videos and so forth. We want to be careful and respectful of our other partners in the community. We want to make sure that City of Grand Rapids and others feel that we're not jumping out too far ahead of them, because this is something that's right in the center of their storm right now. So we want to make sure that we collectively work on that. There are other businesses, other organizations, Steelcase, Amway, Meyer, Spectrum Health, that have joined in conversations with the sheriff and I and others to talk about what can we do collectively. We think that's a far greater way to have impact if we can have a united message. And so we're working through that. We've had several meetings over the past several days. We're meeting again tomorrow afternoon, in fact, to have that discussion. How do we collectively deal with this? And we're going to do what we need to do on our own, but I think that's a great idea. How can we get the word out in a more prolific way, much like the Community Foundation does with connecting with the community. They have these promos that they do about how businesses are serving community. Well, let's talk about how we feel about what's happening in our community related to bias and racism, and what we need to do to change that.
Which organizations are sponsoring or organizing the protests?
Sheriff, I don't know if you have a read on that. When you talk about the organizations that are organizing it, I can't give you a name, a specific name. I think it's more individuals. I don't think they're quote unquote organizations organizing the protest per se, but I know there's one organization that's supposedly is in the background of making attempts to influence things. But I think it's really more of a grassroots type thing where people aren't necessarily organized as an entity, but it's more of individuals that have come together and said, let's make an attempt to change things. I do know though that there are certain churches in town that have actually come to the county and asked that we join them. We did a 9 minutes of silence the other day with Bishop McMurray, Renaissance Church of God in Christ. That's one organization that that has attempted to put this on the map. But there isn't any one organization that's organizing the progress that I'm aware of. Sheriff, I don't know if you have any insight on that.
No, and I think you're right. There's a variety of individuals. The vast majority of them have reached out to perhaps like the city of Grand Rapids. There's been a couple in East Grand Rapids. They're working with and in conjunction with city planners and personnel to make sure that they're aware of the protest happening, that they're able to get appropriate resources. And I just have to reemphasize, there is no community group who planned a riot. A riot happened following a protest that got overheated. And I think that the thought that somebody here locally is planning riots is not correct. We've never found that to be true. We have found local residents who did participate in violence. But again, there are outside groups and outside influences that are impacting these across the entire country.
Yeah. Okay. Hope that answers. Go ahead. Next question.
Next question, did any of the court administrators watch and or discuss the video showing police officer killing George Floyd?
Andy, maybe you want to answer that. I don't know about the district court. You're on the line.
Yeah,
Andy Thalhammer.
yeah, I'm here, and I believe Hillary. I saw her as a participant. She can answer as well. Yeah, I mean, I certainly watched it. It was again, as I think Michelle said in her statements, it was incredibly difficult to watch. I watched it once. I won't watch it again. It was you can ask my wife. It kept me up at night thinking, it was a very, it was a terrible thing to see, obviously. Yeah, we did talk about it. We had discussions here with my direct reports, about it in general and just how unacceptable it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Next question.
All right, next question. Wayman, I'm going to direct this to you. Is the plan to actually implement changes or just talk about concerns?
Well, we have a number of things that we've thought about doing differently as far as how do we take the comments, take the questions, and then take those and see what we can do from a policy standpoint within our organization and what kinds of things do we do differently. So yes, there will be some changes internally. I would suspect that will come out of this because we're sick and tired of hearing about this, reading about this. I don't know what those policy changes are going to be from an administrator's office standpoint. I can't tell our elected what to do. I can't tell the sheriff what to do from a policy standpoint. That's her job. But I can definitely work with her to coordinate, to provide her the resources that she needs whenever she asks of them to do things that help support her, whether that be training, whether that be other resources that we can provide. I know that we've done a number of things, and maybe Darius Quinn and Amy, you can talk about some of the things that we've done since this has occurred in providing supports and services beyond policy changes. But we're going to continue to figure out what more can we do. I've wanted to put some things in place related to what I would call operational excellence that ties back to treating everybody with the level of respect and figuring out what we can do to push and motivate every employee of the county to reach their ultimate possibility as a leader, as an individual within the organization. What can we do to bust through whatever barriers that exist? And we are motivated to do those kinds of things. So I know that Darius and I and Mary Beth Van Til and Amy Rolston and Tamara Buxton's, we've been in conversations about that. What can we do? One thing we're going to do, we're going to read a book about bias. I know that my executive team, we're going to read a book that talks about bias and really get our team to understand what that is, so that there's no misunderstanding about when people feel threatened, undermined, mistreated. How does that happen on a day-to-day basis beyond what happens out on the streets in our community, but what happens inside the organization that creates an unfair, uneasy position for people to be in, to work in. That's what we're going to do. So Darius and Amy, you want to talk about what we're doing internally? Might be able to talk about what we're doing in regards to providing services and support for our departments.
Yeah, Wayman, I would just add on to what we're doing at a countywide level. I would just really encourage departments to really begin the conversations. We've had some really meaningful conversations since this incident with departments and agencies such as the Sheriff's Office, Circuit Court, Prosecutor's Office, and District Court. That's really what I'm hearing from employees as to where the movement can occur. So I would really encourage those leaders that are on the call with us. You can certainly expect direction and support from county administration, but that does not prevent you from really taking the temperature within your own departments as to how your folks are feeling and what you can do to be of support to them. So I know that's not a direct answer to what we're doing. We're still formulating and providing support to departments, but really I would encourage you to have those conversations at the grassroots level.
Amy, I don't know if you want to add any more to that. Okay. I think you're muted for some reason. Can we unmute Amy Rolston, our Human Resources Director? There we go.
Okay. I guess I just wanted to take a minute to reinforce the importance of today, which is for us to listen. So you mentioned at the beginning that we don't have solutions already in place, because the process that we're following is to hear people and understand better what they think would be helpful and meaningful. So I think I have clearly heard, at least from the comments that I've been reviewing, that we need to have a better understanding of implicit bias and the role that it plays in all of our work lives. So that, for me, that's a key takeaway from today's session.
Okay, thank you.
Next question. What measures are being put in place to protect property and persons or otherwise quell rioting and apprehend rioters?
Sheriff, you want to take that one?
Could you repeat the question 1 second?
Sure. What measures are being put in place to protect property and persons or otherwise quell rioting and apprehend rioters?
Okay, so largely the focus of these demonstrations have been in city centers. And as you look at the jurisdiction of policing within our Kent County area, although we do come in and support the city of Grand Rapids when it exceeds their resources, that's not our responsibility to plan for it. So I hope, I don't want to sidestep your question, but really the issue as you're trying to look through what to do with the demonstration is to have the appropriate resources there to respond if the crowd were to threaten a particular asset, if you can. But largely when it turns to a riot situation, you're left with life safety types of measures. So only if something is impacting somebody's direct physical safety would you intervene, because you don't have the resources to protect, for example, the entire downtown of Grand Rapids with police coverage.
Thank you. The next question is for either Amy or Wayman. We have all seen a lot of organizations in recent weeks who have terminated employees who have sparked racial tensions, remarks, or insensitivity. Since there is a no tolerance policy regarding racism within our organization, what is the county's response?
There is no tolerance for it. There is absolutely no tolerance for that behavior. And I'm going to go on record right now to say, if we find it, if we hear about it, if we know about it, we're going to deal with it. And you should know that we've dealt with it even before now. I'm not, there's no getting around it. Some people are not at the point where they understand yet how important another person's life is and their ability to work and exist and be productive and to share, and we will not condone it. If you are undermining, if you are creating a situation where people are not being treated fairly, respected, and so forth and so on, and if we find that out and we have something that we can prove and we can document and we can deal with it, we're going to deal with it. We're not gonna hesitate. We will not tolerate it. We will not tolerate it. Amy?
Yeah, I just to reinforce what you said, I've been with the county for just shy of 7 years now, and of course, when we discipline and fire people, we don't talk about it in HR. But ever since I've been here, and I'm sure before, if we have discovered incidents where people have displayed threatening, intimidating, racist behavior, we have taken strong and swift and decisive action, including in many cases just terminating people based on the circumstances and the facts at play.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be blatant racism that occurs, but it's undermining one another. It's creating a situation where the persons feel like they're threatened and it's a hostile work environment. Those kinds of things. It doesn't have to raise to the level of just blatant. It can be these things that we know, we feel, and we sense. We're going to talk about those things. We're going to help us talk about those things. We're going to get to the bottom of it. When we see it, we're going to call it out.
Thank you. This next one, I believe, is for Sheriff. What measures are we as a community governing agency and police force doing to engender a type of relationship and trust with the citizens of Kent County?
Multiple things. I would say every single day that we're out there in the community, we're working to try to understand the needs of the community, make sure that we're engaging and seeking opportunities to engage with the community that we serve. We had an opportunity over the last 18 months. I was appointed about a year and a half ago, a little over, as sheriff, and we immediately began work on doing a strategic plan. And we basically divided all of our priorities into 4 categories. And one of those is community outreach and becoming more involved with the community so that we can understand the needs better. Another one is staff development. And part of those priorities have to do with developing staff's understanding of the diverse needs of our community, our cultural intelligence, absolutely our understanding of implicit bias. And then beyond that, developing the staff to include a more diverse group of employees, which if I can take a second on that, I've been reading along on some of the questions, and I know that's one of the questions that is asked as well. It seems easy to say, well, why don't we diversify our staff? And I can tell you it's been one of my largest priorities over the last 20 years that I've had an administrative role at the sheriff's office. It's more complicated than it sounds because not all communities value law enforcement. And so they don't value their children deciding to go into law enforcement. And so they don't support them in doing that. And often we don't get a lot of applications from minority applicants. So we really have had to try to strike earlier in somebody's development. We've had several opportunities to work with Grand Rapids Public Schools. We work with Kent ISD to try to, we're talking to students as early as junior high, certainly in high school, and actually now through our school resource programs are talking to young people in the earliest years of elementary to develop that relationship, that implicit trust of law enforcement so that the thought of being a law enforcement officer is something that attracts them. And until we really do break through the barriers of receiving more applicants who are from underrepresented communities, we can't fully take advantage of the opportunities that having a more diverse work staff would offer us. So we're open to any suggestions. We're open to any collaborations that can help push that bar even further. But the one other thing that I want to note is it's one thing to hire individuals, and then the second thing is to foster those individuals so that they become supervisors, they become decision makers, policy makers, and can really work forward on how that department looks and how that department behaves and how the community works and behaves. And it's a long process. We don't hire people from industry outside of police work. In fact, there's legal standards that prohibit it. We have to hire from within the pool of individuals who have worked in police departments. So I can tell you, I've been here for 31 years, and it took me 29 of those years to get to the level of sheriff. And most of the individuals in my command staff have at minimum 18 or 19 years of service, and we're pretty representative of law enforcement. So the seeds of change that are in place today really will take not only a lot of years to wait until it comes to fruition where we have a fully diverse command staff, but it will take a lot of fostering and tending to those seeds to make sure they develop in a way that is satisfying for them personally and effective for the community.
Sure.
Thank you. Next question. Does Kent County have a policy which requires deputies to intervene when they witness another deputy using unnecessary force?
Absolutely. I would say it appears multiple places in our policy and procedure manual. And, I'll get back to some of my very first statements about cultivating a culture of compassion and empathy and respect and a basic basic obligation of every person who represents the sheriff's office to treat people with respect. My expectation is people would intervene far sooner than witnessing violence. They would intervene at a point where they're witnessing disrespectful behavior, they're witnessing behavior that isn't conducive to our environment. And I believe we have a culture that does that. We've had plenty of examples of people talking to their partners and saying, I don't appreciate your behavior, I don't think you're representing well. And there's definitely a culture where people feel that they can do this. There are legal ramifications, as we're all witnessing, for officers who stand by and don't intervene. That's not a policy that's legal, but in our policy manual, it also presents itself. So I would love to make sure people understand the old school perspective of, the blue line standing shoulder to shoulder, and we're not going to tell the truth if it's against one of our buddies, isn't the case generally in law enforcement anymore. I've never known that to be the culture since I've worked in law enforcement. And beyond that, we ensure that every person who starts at the sheriff's office understand that you are not watching your buddies back if you don't intervene when you watch them getting overheated, perhaps starting to lose their temper, perhaps doing small acts that are disrespectful. If you are not interceding when you see your partner doing those things, you are setting your partner up for a career ending, perhaps a life ending, perhaps somebody else's life ending act that we want to get ahead of. And that's the culture that is here in most police agencies that I know of.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Thanks. Next question. Can you explain systematic racism to some who may not understand what it is and how it affects a person of color?
Let's have Teresa Branson take that on. I have thoughts, but I'd like, since you've been on the call, and I know you do an outstanding job in health equity training and so forth, and you probably are best able to define that for us, Teresa, so I'll let you take that on.
Thank you, Wayman, and thank everyone for being on the call. Yes, systemic racism, it is a form of racism that is shows up within the practices and policies of both social and political organizations. It shows up in every institution. You also hear people talking about institutional racism. In the way those practices and policies show up, it is reflected within along the factors of wealth, along the factors of income, along the factors of education, healthcare, criminal justice, law enforcement, every sector that you can potentially think about. And then you take those forms of institutional or systemic racism, and you couple that with, for some individuals within those sectors, daily hidden implicit bias, other forms of oppression, whether that's interpersonal between two different people or through those organizational practices. And then for populations of color, if this is something that they are exposed to through either written or unwritten rules and practices and policies that have a negative or detrimental impact on individuals' overall health and well-being, that starts to impact people significantly. We've heard people through this pandemic with COVID, as well as what we're experiencing right now and have experienced for centuries around racism, just the correlation between racism, health, and stress. So the impact that systemic racism has on populations of color is significant. In fact, I'd argue that systemic racism is deathly for many people in our African American and other racial ethnic populations. So it's really mostly the stress associated with racism when you're exposed to it daily, whether it's within the institutions you work for if it's in the communities, if it's in the stores, if it's everywhere. So it's going to take a lot to undo. And I think as I see a lot of the things that come across my desk, and I'm sure come across everybody else's right now, you know, racism, we keep hearing is a public health crisis, but we also know racism is a crisis, period. You know, just when we look at the systemic racism definition again, it cuts across every sector of county government. So it's going to take every sector of county government, every sector of other local municipalities to address it.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Teresa. That's very good. And I saw a question that came up about where's Chris Becker, the prosecutor. Chris could not be here today. He wanted to be here. He had a meeting that he could not pull out of. We thank him for what he does and what he's wanting to do to support the county in this effort, and the sheriff and I and others. So just know that he wanted to be on the call today, everyone, and we'll be looking forward to talking to Chris down the road. So we'll take the next question.
All right. This actually follows up nicely to Teresa's. Is it possible to have the health equity and social justice training be made at least an annual training for all departments in the county?
Yes, and I want to just say to Teresa and to Adam and the team at the health department, we appreciate so much how you all have taken the lead on health equity training for us. I remember when we were in the CIC a few years ago, I told Darius Quinn that we really need to think about how do we embody that throughout the organization. You've done a really wonderful job, and I know it takes a lot of time and effort. So we're going to push on that, and we're going to ask the health department to come to the scene and help us figure out how to make that happen. But Teresa, why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, and thank you. And right as we're having this call, we have a team meeting virtually. And I do want to recognize that team because since 2012, the health department and community partners, specifically Denise Evans from the Strong Beginnings program and Tamara Bustance, before she came to the county, have been working since that time to bring about 2-day health equity social justice dialogue workshops. They're meeting all day today, taking a break right now to be on this call to plan for virtual health equity social justice workshops because, you know, during this time again with COVID, we have to find other ways to still continue to have this very important dialogue that's rooted in racism, determinants of equity, and things that are having significant impact on our community daily. So yes, it's possible, but a little bit of history for everyone. When we offered those workshops here through the health department with our partners, we opened those workshops up and we were intentional about inviting community. In fact, they started with at least having 20% of those slots open for community partners, and that has since grown where we have less county and health department employees engaged, and it's probably more 80% of our community engaged in those dialogue workshops. We also were intentional about having conversations with individual department directors of county government of Kent County, which led us to providing 2 half-day health equity social justice dialogue workshops with different county departments. We also incorporated the same workshops within 2 new employee trainings. So my colleague Karen Pilon had been tracking the number of employees in the county that have engaged in these. And I think that at least for existing employees, most employees have already engaged in health equity, social justice dialogue workshops. We've done this at the Sheriff's Department, to the front of the court, to the 63rd District Court, and many more departments that have taken advantage of the workshops through our Human Resource Department offerings. Where the county has started to move toward is the cultural intelligence training over the last 2 years. In the past 2 years, every county employee has been required to engage in cultural intelligence. So one of the things I've been having conversations just this past week with Wayman and others is how do we move forward in that space? We're a county that does do a lot in terms of we have the drive, which is one of our CQ areas that everybody knows about. We have the knowledge, but we can't get stuck in the knowledge. It's time now that we have to move toward strategy and action.
Yeah.
And that's one of the fundamental areas that we wanted to really hear from county employees today and beyond is what strategy and what actions can we go to move us forward?
Yeah, and we need to take what we've done here and move that beyond, even further beyond here, because I think what you've done really, it sets well with what I think a lot of the businesses that I've communicated with over the last several days are looking for. So stay tuned for more of that discussion. So thanks, Teresa.
You're welcome.
Wayman, we've had a couple of questions come in about how will Kent County respond to demands to defund the police should those demands arise locally?
So we have been meeting with the city of Grand Rapids, Mark Washington and I. It's like an everyday conversation that we've been having, and we stand by them and support them. And defunding a police department is not as easy as it seems. There's some unintended consequences to that. We need to make sure that whatever we do, it's thoughtful, and like any other business decision, you need to know what the domino impact of that decision is going to be. And it sounds easy to do, but not necessarily always. Um, um, the benefit, the perceived benefit doesn't always measure out to be a benefit. It can be, in fact, bad decisions resulting from kind of jumping before you go through the exercise of assessing what is this decision going to do for us. And we don't want to do things without having some measured approach to assessing and looking at it. So I think that's where I know the police department, the city's looking at things. Sheriff, I can tell you that we're always looking for ways to minimize cost and expense because there's only so much to go around, and we've all been hit with COVID-19. Whether we like it or not, there are going to be less resources on the table anyway for the next 2 years. So whether you want to be defunded or reduced or not, it's probably going to happen. The things that everybody wants to put on the table that they want to buy and they want to resource. It's not. I mean, we met this morning in our CIP discussion with the boards of capital improvement projects. Well, we're not doing what we had planned. We're not doing a 0.25 mil. It is less than that because there's just not the money to go around with what we're experiencing right now with COVID-19. So I'm game to do what makes sense. What makes sense to make sure that we get at changing things, but not doing things just because somebody says, well, if you defund people, then you won't have more of the same. You might have more of the same. It just, it might not be as much, but you might still have the same. We got to do more than just making decisions to defund people. We got to change people's minds, and we got to change people's hearts, and we got to figure out some of our policies and our programs and the training, some of the things that we're talking about right now. Those are the things that we need to do.
Thank you. The next one I will direct to Andy. Kent County jury pools are predominantly white. Will anything be done to remedy this and provide more inclusion of people of color to participate in the justice process? Given that people of color are disproportionately represented in our jail and prison, it would seem necessary to make our jury pool more reflective of our community.
Yeah, I certainly understand the question. We're kind of bound again by statutes and laws as to how juries are selected and the randomness which it does. I will say that our county is one of, I think, 2 or maybe just 1 that actually researches this and see what the representation is of different demographics. We have made some strides in this. In fact, that we've noticed that that is changing a little bit. But we really are bound to the, I guess, arbitrariness or randomness of, I guess, the system itself. That I don't want to spend too much time going over the whole system. I could certainly put it down for someone, to research if they wanted to. But the fact is, we are doing what we are supposed to be doing according to the law, as far as getting a random selection of our population in the jury selection process. It does become out of our hands once you get into voir dire, when attorneys take over and they can, dismiss for cause or without cause and different things like that.
That's good.
Thanks,
Andy.
Another question. As a county employee in a customer service role, what is the appropriate response when customers or vendors demonstrate casual racism or microaggressions?
Um, that's a good question. Let's see. Amy, you want to talk about that maybe? And maybe Darius Quinn from an HR standpoint? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot, and then Darius, I would welcome any input you would have as well. In my opinion, I think this is really going to be situation by situation based. We can't always control the behavior of the public. I guess a good example of that is people who chose to riot, right? That we're limited in terms of our ability to control people. But we also on the other side of things, I don't believe that we should be subjected to behavior from the public that is outside of our values. So I think you need to judge the situation, and if you feel like that person who is treating you disrespectfully is going to be open to your input, then I think that you should speak to the person and let them know in a respectful way the impact that their behavior is having on you. If you feel like that person is not going to be open to that type of exchange, I think you should seek help from your supervisor in those situations.
Yeah, and let me just say this too. You got to be really careful about owning the discipline, if you will, or the sanction, if you will, of other individuals who are public people. I've seen it happen. In fact, in Flint, Michigan, there was a situation where someone was being rude, or they were doing something in one of the stores, and one of the store security guards got involved and began to chastise this individual and say, you can't do that. And then they went home and they got their husband and son, and they came back to the store, and then they ended up shooting the security guard. And what a mess that was. Okay, so you got to be really careful about what you want to challenge and what you want to take up. You may want to talk with your supervisor. You may want to, back away from that. No one should be disrespected. But if you can't resolve it with, like what Amy is saying, with respectful dialogue and behavior with that individual, be very careful. We don't want you to be the next victim, if you will, of someone's opportunity to make a statement about whether they were treated unfairly or not. Darius?
Yeah, thanks, Wayman. Just a really quick piggyback on that one. I'm in a conference room right now, and as I look up on the wall, I see the county's values, and we've made it a point to get these core values to each and every county department, office, and agency. Whether you're in the Parks Department, I think Josh asked that question. So whether you're in a county park, those values should be visible to some degree. But I also agree with what Amy had to say in being careful to evaluate each situation on a case-by-case basis. Vendors are much easier. You can report that, as Wayman indicated, to your supervisor, or report that to purchasing, and we can deal with vendors. But dealing with the general public, there's a fine line and potentially even legal implications. I'm reminded of a time several years ago with one of my colleagues and I were out doing some training, and some folks made it very apparent that they did not welcome that training because they had a Confederate flag kind of posted on their car as it related to, we had to walk by this Confederate flag. And upon legal review, it was determined that, First Amendment rights were afforded by that individual. So again, just kind of piggybacking on what Wayman said, being careful not to administer discipline. During these times, I would also just add, and I've had several conversations with members of the CIC, being careful in providing individuals with as much grace as possible right now. And I'm not saying accept racism or any form of disregard, because we're all, you've heard the term, we're all in it together. We're really trying to figure it out, and departments are really trying to get a hold of, how do I talk to my employees about this stuff? So afford grace where possible, except in those circumstances where you believe that it is blatant. So that's my thought.
Thanks, Darius. Can I go back to the one question that was asked earlier about defunding the sheriff's department or funding the police department. I'm not in favor of doing that. What I want people to understand, though, we're in certain times and we need to look at every department and what our costs and our expenses are. I'm not in favor of defunding sheriff's departments or police departments, but I am in favor of everyone doing all that we can to pool our resources to do the best job we can to be an efficient running organization in a community. That's where I'm coming from. So, Sheriff.
I think part of that conversation in the community needs a little bit more explanation. And I think I want to throw that out. There are mandatory functions of police departments and sheriff's offices. In Kent County, for a sheriff's office versus a police department, we operate a jail. That's a mandatory function. We have no variance on the fact that we have to run it. We have to respond to calls for service in communities that don't have police departments. That's not a lot of what we can manage, whether we go or don't go. People call us with emergencies and we have to respond. When you talk about defunding police departments, understand that many of the programs that gets to are those that are not mandated. So I will use the example at Kent County of our community police officers or school resource officers, or our programs to train young people. It would be our inmate service programs in the correctional facility, those things that are designed to give a warm handoff, if you will, back to the community, or our education programs. And that is typical of most police and sheriff's departments in the nation. So there are a lot of mental health initiatives, education initiatives, diversion initiatives, and all of those would work really, really well if planned right and planned to go hand in hand, if you will, with law enforcement and corrections and the courts and the prosecutor's office. But removing a service without replacing a service, or having the service that you're going to use to replace it with in place as that safety net first, is very, very dangerous. Yeah. And I think if you listen very hard to a lot of the hue and cries about defunding police departments, the absence of the more full-bodied conversation behind it is evident. So I just hope that we're all able to kind of ride this wave for a little bit and understand that there's a lot of emotion right now. There's a lot of ill-advised thoughts that are being discussed, and look through that and look at the details. How are you going to meet the needs of the person in our community who has an emergency, or maybe has a mental health crisis, or perhaps has a public health crisis, a substance use disorder, and make sure that we've got something in place? And that answer might not be the police. And if it's not the police, awesome, to be frank about it, that's great, because you're right, the police aren't the best people to answer every need. But we are often the people who are left in the gap where there fails to be another way to meet the need.
Yeah, so. Can I just expound on that? Another thing too, for us, we've gone through 2 recessions, if you will, since I've been here at the county, where we had to reduce the number of employees. And sheriff's department, the health department, was probably two of the most affected departments where we had to reduce staff, and they're not back up to the levels that they were at. So it would be shooting ourselves in the foot, knowing that what she's talking about, providing these various services to community, this doesn't make a lot of sense. We got to be smart about that, because we're not exempt from problems happening in community, and we as taxpayers want our property protected. We want our lives protected. We want to be able to function in life, in community at a very high level. And just, we got to be careful with that kind of discussion. I think, like she says, people are very upset. They think that the way to solve this is defund, but that doesn't necessarily correlate to solving the problems that we have in our community. We got to be very careful about that. All right, next question.
Next question. I'm going to let Adam or Teresa speak to this. It says, will Kent County, specifically the health department, be permitted to publicly identify systemic racism as a public health crisis?
Yeah, so I'll take the first swing at that, and Teresa can reply as well. Racism is absolutely a public health crisis, and it always has been a public health crisis. And it's something that we need to continue to communicate and to develop our programming around racism and all the social determinants of health as primary movers of disparity of health outcomes in the community. And how we communicate that and how we align that with substance that matters, I think, is the question that we're wrestling with right now. So we're just not adding words, but we're actually adding substance, and we have something of content that helps to carry the issue forward and make progress in the community. Teresa, you probably have some thoughts on that, and Wayman, you do also. I think we need to make sure that whatever we do also is aligned with the county, and that we're speaking with one voice as a county, and that we're making sure that we have one aligned message that means something for all of our departments.
Yes, if I may, thank you, Adam. Yeah, we've had this question posed, and I think, as I was mentioning earlier, we've also seen where other counties and communities have made such statements and declarations. As Adam mentioned, racism is, a public health crisis. And if I want to look at racism just as public health, I do think it's not just incumbent upon the Kent County Health Department. I think it's incumbent upon our local public health system, which again is every sector. We don't just talk about health equity and social justice without understanding that, again, every county department, everything that the Sheriff's Department does, everything that DPW, everything that every county department does impact the health of our overall community, the populations that we serve in Kent County. What we're trying to tackle here, although I've heard people say again and again that, oh, this has all been heightened right now. It wasn't just heightened right now. Everything that's happening right now is deeply rooted from the start of the time in 1619 at the introduction of slavery, when African Americans first came into our community. That's going to take a long time to undo. And I do think we have to be very intentional about how we go about it. June 9th marked 23 years that I've worked for the county. And I have seen a lot of statements be made at the state level, legislation introduced. I think that those statements are good, but they often don't translate into action. And I think we have to be forward-looking. We have to think about what we can do right now in this moment to take action, to take strategy. Yes, making a statement is the first step, and that was one of the first steps we wanted to do as well by having this call and meeting, because we need to hear. We have 1,700 or more employees that have ideas. We have a very talented workforce. We have even more robust partners that we're listening to every day. We do want to have a community conversation very soon to do the same. So I think we, in terms of making a statement, you've seen statements are being issued. Adam has issued statements through video. We're not, necessarily sticking our head in the sand right now. I think we've all had to take time and to take a step and a time to pause, to think about what we can do and how we go about doing that. We also, as a department, don't just want, there are things people call on each of our individual departments to do, but I also recognize that we are one county government, that we are working together on some shared goals, which is fundamental to who we are as a county. So do I see something like that forthcoming? Adam mentioned in response to a question earlier, is there may be things that we can do individually as departments. We certainly can. But we're starting with the overall conversation in the county so that we can hear from everybody, so we can listen, take everyone's ideas, and then come back into our individual departments to see what we can address.
Thanks,
But one
Teresa.
thing I do want, because
Go ahead.
this other question that hasn't come up, or maybe if it's on the feed I haven't seen, is at the personal level, because we can make statements, but we have to be very mindful of, if you are a Black employee working in Kent County, your Black colleagues, and you've seen these articles, and you don't need to see an article to know this, we're not okay. We're not okay just because of what happened right now.
Yeah.
We're not okay because racism is not acceptable anywhere, and the deep impacts that it has on people. We have to be able to address it, and we have to make room for that, and to make sure that we are checking in on each other. We're checking in on our colleagues. We're checking in on the African-American individuals that are working in our institution.
Yeah.
And if you're African-American and you're listening to the call right now, I know many people have cried. And so we do have to think about too, in addition to just making statements, we got to make sure that we're taking care of things, because it is a matter of the heart.
Yeah.
And yesterday evening, I consider myself as a strong African-American female leader in our county. And I've had my times since that, seeing the video. And I've also had the time where I, cried different times in my own way. And yesterday evening is when I think it hit me the hardest, listening to women of color speaking to other women of color on, led by Pastor Dorian, Denise Evans, Mercedes from Spectrum Health, and Melissa Armstead. And one of the things that really hit me was a verse that was shared, which is, when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. And I know we're county government and we don't always, talk about things like that. But for me, I've been really overwhelmed. And I know a lot of my colleagues and department directors and staff have been really overwhelmed and very frustrated. And I'm hoping that we can take all that frustration and all those feelings and all that pain that we're all feeling, and we can channel that into some real action.
Productive action.
That supports a statement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Teresa. And my heart goes out to you, knowing how this impacts you as a Black female in the organization. You're attempting to serve and help humanity, and you're doing it with a smile. You smile all the time, and you have this. You remind me of I've told you this before. One of my grandkids, and just their way of approaching things. You are definitely out there pushing it, and we thank you for what you do every single day. And the many other Black females in the organization that are faced with this, and not only the Black females, but the white females too, because you know what? They feel the same pain. They feel it. They see it. They hurt too, and I've seen it. I've witnessed that too. And we're all the same at the end of the day. We all, fortunately, some of us, we all came from the same source. We all bleed. We all have feelings. We all hurt. Some at times more than others. When we see what happened to one of the people that look more like us, then we probably hurt a bit more. And that's the point of this. We hurt a bit more than some. And I think people need to take a step back and realize that. And that to embrace the hurt that's being felt, and wrap your you got to be careful about COVID-19. You can't do this wrapping and holding, and you got to do the elbow thing. You got to do you can't do that. Don't do that.
Right.
Not with COVID. But you got to figure out how you can be of help, and you've been a support to me, and I want to do the same to you. So please let's support our fellow teammates here at the county in any way that we can to help us all get through what you're going through, what I'm going through. I watched that video and I could not contain myself. My wife came in one day. She says, "What's the matter?" I says, "Well, I just got through watching the thing." I watched all of it this time. I couldn't watch all of it the first time. So we hear you. Next question, please. Thank you.
Wayman, we have time for one more question.
Oh, wow. We're already at the time? My gosh.
Already at the time.
Yeah.
Kind of follow up on what's been
been talked about, I'm going to kind of combine this into one question. One is, how do we take a holistic approach to dealing with racism in Kent County? But more specifically, there's somebody that asked, how can I, as a white employee of the county, make a statement or take a stand with my coworkers of color?
So we've talked about that. I don't know, Darius, Teresa, Amy, we've talked about that. Maybe Darius, why don't you talk about what the CIC's talked about in terms of making that stand, making that statement, some ideas that we have, and we'll close there. Our CIC, the Cultural Insight Council, has been working, and they have some thoughts, and we're going to be working together with with that group. Darius, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, thanks, Wayman. There are a number of resources that we're pulling together right now that can be used to aid and support your African American, your Black coworkers. A couple of things just come to mind for me is to use your voice, right? Don't stay silent when you see instances of injustice occurring. You can certainly get involved locally here, support Black businesses, but certainly examine your circles of influence and use your voice to speak up against those cases where you see injustices. From a leadership level, many of you have heard me say this before. This particular issue right now that we're being faced with George Floyd, this is an African American male issue primarily that has been affected. As you begin to take a look at your pattern of practice as county leaders, take a look at your last 5 to 10 hires, taking a look at your promotions and seeing where those gaps exist, making sure that you have limited room for bias to occur within your hiring practices. So again, I would just take those 2 items, using your voice, examining your circles of influence, and again, speaking out where you see injustices. So we will be producing a document that will go more in depth. And if you're interested in that, Wayman mentioned at the start of the call, and I'll close with that, email cic@kentcountymi.gov, and we'll make sure that we get that out to you and make that available.
Okay, thanks, Darius. And thanks to everyone that were on the call. We appreciate it. We're at almost 1:30 now, 1:25. Do we have time for another question? If not, I'll move on and talk about what our next steps are.
Sure,
Okay.
we'll ask another question. All right.
This one is more about safety. Other than at the courthouse, it is my understanding that guns are allowed in our county and city buildings. As an employee, this is very uncomfortable, and there is no easy way to know if they are carrying legally. What can we do about this?
Sheriff, can you answer that briefly, and then we'll try to do a better job answering that. We're going to take all the questions. We're going to try to get all of these. We will get all of these answers back in a more formal way. But Sheriff, can you take that on?
I can. So, this has been evaluated many, many times, both from the legal standpoint, constitutionally. Bottom line is, in the state of Michigan, somebody has the right to carry an unconcealed weapon as long in a public building, except for areas that are restricted use only or not open to the public. And it has to be marked so not open to the public. So for an example, it would be any lobby area, a public elevator, in the exterior of the building. But when it gets to one of the doors that somebody would have to buzz you in, or if it's marked unauthorized or for authorized use only, then somebody is not allowed to carry a weapon if it's excluded into one of those areas. So not sure that answers it completely. I'm hoping it does, but generally speaking, if you see somebody carrying a firearm in one of the public areas and you're not comfortable with their behavior, besides the fact that they have a firearm, then let somebody know and let somebody who's able to assess what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sheriff. We're going to close the conversation, the town hall, if you will, with our employees. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Many of you have questions. We didn't get to all of them today, but we will respond. We would like for you to participate in our survey that we're going to be sending out that has more opportunity for you to give us feed, information, ideas. We're going to take that information and we're going to continue to figure out what can we do better, what can we do to enable our community to be more hospitable to one another. We're going to do just some thinking about what can we do more. And then for some of you, we would like you to just stay tuned. We may want to pull you in to some of the things that the CIC is doing, some of the activities that we're planning. We've talked about doing a town hall. I don't know if that's going to happen. We've talked about making a statement. I think we're hearing that perhaps that statement is something that we want to do collectively. So be in tune for those things to come forth. Next week, that survey should come out. We please respond to that survey that gives us insights and ideas from you. We want to hear from you. And thank you. And please support one another. Please continue to be vigilant about treating each other with the level of respect and the dignity that we all deserve. We really thank you all. We can't thank you enough for everything that you're doing, every department. We appreciate the sheriff's department and we appreciate our courts and our health department, all of the facilities that we have. We're in this together. We thank you so much and we will get through this, but we can't do it alone. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.